So season 4 of The Boys just wrapped up, and there's a lot of talk on whether or not it is a bad season. And before I talk about anything else, I do want to quickly acknowledge that the show has gradually been on a slight decline ever since season 1, which everyone regards as a masterpiece, or at the very least, very, very good. And I think a large part of this is due to the unique concept of superheroes having flaws, or flat out being goddamn psychopaths, wearing off. The novelty of it just doesn't hit the same as it used to. Especially earlier on during the first few seasons, during the height of the Marvel fever, it almost felt like a counterculture to that. But the extremely shocking deaths at this point almost feels normal in this universe, and to a certain degree that has its own benefits for the story because it highlights the decline of the society that the characters live in. And speaking about the society of The Boys, let's talk about the big elephant in the room before we get into anything else. And that is the show's portrayal of American politics. Now, there are two criticisms you can have. One valid and the other not so much. The first one is that if you don't like season 4 for how much more political it is, then that is a fair opinion to have. But I do understand where the show is going with this, which we'll get into shortly. The second criticism is that if you don't like season 4 because the show writers now made this about politics, respectfully, did you watch the entire Boys with your eyes closed and your ears plugged? Because the show's always been about politics. It's always criticized and talked about American politics. From Homelander utilizing a tragedy that he caused to push a defense bill, to multi-billion-dollar companies pandering to minorities that they don't even give a shit about solely for marketability and money. Long story short, either way you look at it, they've always centered superheroes around their commentary of American politics. Hell, it was one of the unique things I liked about the show. In fact, a lot of the comedy in The Boys comes from this. Hell, one of my favorite parts was the Will Ferrell cameo we got in the A-Train movie about, well, A-Train trying to run out of the hood and become a track star or something. That was just fucking hilarious. And I think one thing that has been lost in all of this and why season 4 has amplified its depiction of American politics is because of how Homelander is trying to obtain ultimate political power, which means going through the political system, so it's naturally going to be more political, more polarizing. Since Homelander has always been at the forefront, the center of the writer's commentary on conservative politics, it only makes sense that this is all going to be put under a magnifying glass. But I love how the writers don't lose track of what makes this show so good. Even though Homelander is at the center of all of this political turmoil, it centers around his character, his shortcomings, his flaws. A lot of this is just to fill his bottomless hole of insecurity. Hell, even Sage is doing a lot of this just to fuel her own ego and her own intelligence. We see that at the very end of the finale. So with that all being said, for the most part, I don't mind how political it really is. Albeit, I do think there are some moments they could definitely dial it back a little while still keeping the politics at the heart of the plot. Okay, with the major criticism that I've heard for season 4 out of the way, it's time to answer the big question. Is this season good or bad? Well, I think it's good for the most part. There are definitely some moments where I feel like it's just building towards something rather than giving us that something, which does suck. And I also think a lot of the character interactions and dynamics are becoming a little bit dried up, kind of surface level. Like seriously, if Homelander, maybe a couple people from the Seven, or Butcher is not on the screen, I really don't care for the most part. There are still some scenes, but still. It isn't that the other characters are bad per se, it's just that some characters are far more interesting and focused upon than others. Like for example, and by the way, I'll keep this as vague as possible so I don't spoil anything for you, but I love this big twist slash reveal for Butcher that really highlights his mental health and the state of it. It is just done so well. But with all that being said, I still think the show has a lot to offer and it's still building towards something, and luckily we have gotten news that season 5 will be the final season, so we're not gonna have like a Walking Dead situation where it's just gonna be this steady decline and it's gonna keep going because it's gonna go for 10 seasons or more. We're finally gonna get a conclusion to all this. So like I said, it has been a slow decline, but each season's still been entertaining. It still offers something, and with its conclusion, season 5, I still think it's going to be entertaining as well. So if you're a fan of The Boys and you haven't seen season 4, even with all the controversy surrounding it, all the criticisms, I still think it is worth a watch. But if you think I'm wrong, comment below why. But other than that, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, comment below what I should do next. I can do anime, shows, movies, games, whatever. But again, thank you so much for watching.